employees dismiss black man during meeting. But when they discover his true identity as the new CEO, everyone is left completely shocked. The conference room at Tech Dynamics was full, the air thick with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The fluorescent lights shone brightly, reflecting off the faces of the directors and managers settling into their chairs, ready for a meeting that promised to be historic. Michael Johnson, the new CEO, was about to give his inaugural presentation, but before he entered, two voices echoed against the walls of the room, filled with sarcasm and disdain. "Do you really think he can lead the company?" Sarah Miller, the marketing director, let out a sharp laugh. A black executive coming from a small startup? "This is a joke," she said, crossing her arms dismissively. "Yeah, you're right," replied David Carter, the CFO, with a cynical smile. "Let's see how long he lasts before everyone realizes he doesn't have what it takes. I bet he doesn't even know what to do with all these financial data." Both ignored the fact that Michael was standing just outside the room, hearing every word. His heart raced a little faster, but he wouldn't let fear or anger take control. Instead, he took a deep breath, adjusted his tie, and walked in, his calm demeanor contrasting with the tension in the room. The murmurs ceased instantly, and an awkward silence filled the space. All eyes turned to him, and he could feel the weight of expectations and prejudices. "Good morning, everyone," Michael began, his voice firm and clear. "My name is Michael Johnson, and it's a great privilege to be the new CEO of Tech Dynamics." He paused, observing his team's reactions. Some faces were closed off while others seemed more receptive, but he sensed the fear of change hanging in the air. "I am here to talk about our vision for the future of the company," he continued, maintaining an upright posture. "I believe that diversity and inclusion are not just ethical values, they are also essential for the success of any company in today's world. I want to transform Tech Dynamics into an example of how diversity can drive innovation and creativity." Sarah and David exchanged knowing glances, clearly skeptical. "What does he know about innovation?" Sarah whispered to David, who nodded in. Sensing the resistance, Michael decided to turn it to his advantage. "I come from a place where overcoming challenges is the norm," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "I believe we all have stories that have shaped us, and it's important that we share our experiences and learn from one another. I want each of you to feel valued here, regardless of your background." The room was silent, but Michael noticed some subtle reactions. A few employees appeared intrigued, while others were still visibly uncomfortable. He knew he was just beginning the battle, but he also felt he had a chance to change things. "Let's work together to create an environment where everyone can thrive," Michael concluded, looking directly at Sarah and David. "This isn't just a matter of policy, it's a matter of progress. If we want Tech Dynamics to continue to grow, we need to embrace diversity and inclusion at all levels." The silence was now palpable. Michael had spoken with sincerity and passion, and while resistance was still present, he had planted the seed of change. He knew the journey would be long and difficult, but the determination in his heart was growing. "We're all in this together," he finished before leaving the room, feeling stronger than ever. He knew he would face challenges ahead, but he was ready to fight for a more inclusive and just future at Tech Dynamics. The atmosphere in the Tech Dynamics conference room was heavy, almost tangible. A long dark wood table occupied the center of the space, surrounded by leather chairs that seemed more a testament to the past than a symbol of innovation. Sarah and David, longtime directors of the company, sat side by side, their faces displaying a mix of skepticism and disdain. They awaited the arrival of Michael, the new CEO. The tension was evident. Whispers among the employees waiting for the meeting had turned into anxious murmurs. When Michael entered, his presence lit up the room. He was a tall man, with an imposing stature, yet he carried an aura of calmness. Dressed in a well-fitted suit and sporting a confident smile, he contrasted sharply with the cold expressions of the directors. As he settled into the head of the table, he felt Sarah and David's eyes fixed on him like predators waiting for a misstep. "Thank you all for being here today," Michael began, his voice firm yet friendly. "I'm excited to discuss some changes that I believe will benefit not only the company, but all of us as a team." Without missing a beat, Sarah leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with sarcasm. "Changes? You mean more of the same, right? Or maybe something you read in a leadership book," she said with a dismissive smile. Michael maintained his composure, responding in a calm tone. "Actually, I've been observing what we can improve. Tech Dynamics needs to become a more inclusive place. Diversity isn't just a buzzword, it's a strategy that can drive our innovation and success. David sees the opportunity. And what do you know about that, Michael? Do you think a pretty speech will solve the problems we have here? The industry is tough, and we need results, not illusions. David's words echoed in the room, and some employees exchanged nervous glances. Michael took a deep breath, knowing he was facing not only resistance but also prejudice. I understand that change can be uncomfortable, but if we look at the most successful companies today, we'll see that diversity is a key factor. I will be presenting a more detailed plan in the coming weeks. I want everyone to feel part of this process. The meeting continued, but Sarah and David's hostility was undeniable. They took turns with subtle attacks, trying to destabilize him at every opportunity. During a discussion about a new project, Sarah raised her hand, interrupting Michael. Sorry, but do you really believe we can trust your decisions? Do you have experience leading a team of this size? Michael, determined not to be shaken, replied, I believe that experience is important, but having a clear vision and a genuine commitment to the team is also essential. I'm here to learn from all of you, just as I hope you learn from me. Incorrigible, David retorted. Learn from you? Really? It doesn't seem like you even know where to start. The sarcastic tone carried a venom that resonated among those present. I don't expect everyone to agree with me right away, Michael said, maintaining his composure. But I'm here to listen and build a better future together. For that, we need open and honest dialogue. Noticing the growing resistance, Michael decided to take action. He knew he needed to rally the leadership team around his vision. I believe we need a meeting with all the directors to discuss how we can effectively implement these changes. We need an action plan that involves each of you. Before we continue with this exciting story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know which city you're watching this video from in the comments. The room fell silent as Sarah and David exchanged furtive glances. Michael realized he was facing not only distrust but a system that resisted change. He stood up, looking directly into the eyes of everyone present. We cannot be afraid to change. The future of Tech Dynamics depends on it, and I'm counting on each of you to be part of this transformation. As he left the room, Michael felt a mix of frustration and determination. The resistance was strong, but he knew the battle for inclusion was just beginning. He was prepared to face the challenges ahead, and was determined to find allies among those who still believed in the possibility of a more diverse and inclusive Tech Dynamics. Karen observed the meeting room with a mix of discomfort and guilt. The hostility that hung in the air between her colleagues, Sarah and David, and the new CEO, Michael, was palpable. She had witnessed how they mocked him, how they questioned his decisions without any regard for what he had to offer. The weight of her own complacency pressed down on her. She had always considered herself a fair person, but now she realized that by staying silent, she was allowing prejudice to persist. That afternoon, after a tumultuous meeting, Karen headed to Michael's office. With a lump in her throat, she hesitated at the door before knocking. "May I come in?" she asked, looking at him as he focused on a pile of documents. "Of course, Karen. Come in," Michael replied without looking up. She entered, gently closing the door behind her. "How can I help you?" I wanted to talk about what happened in the meeting," she began, feeling nervous. "I felt uncomfortable with the way Sarah and David treated you." Michael lifted his eyes, his expression calm and attentive. "That's understandable. They have their own insecurities. It's hard for some people to accept change. But that's not right. I should have said something, but I stayed silent. I don't want to be complacent," Karen said, frustration shining through her voice. "Being honest with yourself is already a big step," Michael said with a slight smile. "It's easy to get swept up in group dynamics, but you have the chance to be an ally. Don't underestimate the impact that can have." She took a deep breath, feeling a flame of determination ignite within her. "You're right. I want to help. What can I do? Maybe you could organize a workshop on unconscious bias. That could open the eyes of the team and spark the conversations that need to happen," suggested Michael, his eyes glimmering with hope. "That's a good idea. But what if Sarah and David oppose it?" Karen asked, worried. "It's possible," Michael admitted. "But if you believe in its importance, you'll find the strength to face them. Change starts with small steps." Determined, Karen decided it was time to take action. In the following days, she began working on organizing the workshop, looking for information and resources that could help illustrate the issues of unconscious bias. However, as expected, When she presented the idea to Sarah and David at the leadership team meeting, the reception was anything but warm. "Do you really think a workshop is going to solve the company's problems, Karen?" Sarah said with a sarcastic tone. "I think you're being a bit naive. In fact, it's a way to educate the team and promote a more inclusive environment. This is important for all of us," Karen replied, trying to keep her composure. David interjected, crossing his arms. "Honestly, this just seems like another way to create division. We need to focus on results, not on empty discussions. It's not just about discussions, it's about building a space where everyone feels valued and respected," Karen insisted, her voice firm. "You're lost, Karen. This is a distraction," Sarah retorted with a disdainful smile. But Karen didn't let it shake her. She knew she was right and was willing to fight for it. As the days went by, she realized that Sarah and David's resistance only fueled her determination. She was willing to become an ally in Michael's fight and stand up for what was right, even if it meant facing more powerful colleagues. She dedicated hours to planning the workshop, reaching out to experts and preparing materials that could help illustrate the impact of unconscious bias. When the event finally arrived, Karen felt nervous, but also excited. She wanted the team to see the value of inclusion and how it could benefit everyone, not just Michael. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every step counts, she thought, as she prepared to face any resistance she might encounter. Karen was ready to take a stand and become the voice of change that Tech Dynamics so desperately needed. In the corporate environment of Tech Dynamics, a climate of tension hung over the employees. After Michael's presentation, many were excited about the possibility of change. However, there was a group of collaborators who still felt insecure. In a discreet meeting room, a small group of employees gathered in secret. Among them were Carla, a software developer, and João, a data analyst. The two exchanged worried glances as the others discussed. "We need to do something. The culture here is toxic and it can't continue like this," Carla said, lightly banging her hand on the table. "Michael has a vision, and we need to support him." "I agree, but how?" "Sarah and David have a lot of influence," João replied, looking out the window as if waiting for the answer to appear from the gray sky stretching outside. "Thorsar, we need to create a safe space, an event where we can express ourselves and discuss inclusion and diversity," suggested Beatrice, a marketing specialist. "If we can gather the voices that support Michael, he will have greater backing." The group began planning an event that would bring together all employees regardless of their positions. The idea was to create an environment where people could share their experiences and listen to each other. "But what if Sarah and David try to sabotage the event?" asked Carlos, a young intern who was feeling anxious. "They have a history of undermining any initiative that isn't theirs." "We need to act quickly and discreetly," Carla replied. "Let's use our internal social networks to promote the event, and Michael should be invited. His presence could inspire everyone." Determined, the group started working on the details. They set a date, chose a location, and developed a format that included discussion panels and spaces for testimonials. Excitement was growing, but concern about the upper management's reaction lingered. Meanwhile, in his office, Michael was aware of the atmosphere hanging over Tech Dynamics. He had heard, through informal conversations, that some employees were meeting in secret. He wasn't sure how this would unfold, but he was willing to listen. So he decided to call a meeting with the employees who showed interest in promoting change. On the day of the meeting, Carla, João, and Beatriz were nervous, but filled with hope. When they entered the room, Michael welcomed them with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming. I'm eager to hear your ideas," he said, sitting at the head of the table. Carla took the lead. "Michael, we are planning a diversity and inclusion event. We believe this would be an important step for Tech Dynamics culture, and we would love your participation." "I would love to participate. It's vital that everyone feels heard and valued," Michael replied, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "What do you have in mind?" João explained the structure of the event, detailing the planned activities. "We want it to be a safe space for everyone, a place where people can share their stories and experiences." "That's magnificent," Michael commented. "Diver, and I want you to know that you can count on my full support. How can we help make this a success?" Beatrice, feeling encouraged, added, "We need to ensure that upper management doesn't sabotage this. We have to be strategic." "Leave that to me," Michael affirmed with a determined expression. "I will talk to the board and ensure that the event has all the support it needs. We can't let resistance hold us back from moving forward." The employees felt an immediate sense of relief with Michael's determination. They were ready to move ahead, and the idea of the event seemed increasingly tangible. With renewed energy, they began discussing additional details in the guest list. "Let's make this happen," Carla said, smiling. And so, with Michael's leadership and the enthusiastic support of the employees, Tech Dynamics began preparing for an event that promised not only to be a milestone in the company's history, but also a catalyst for genuine and necessary change. Michael Johnson was sitting in his office, the soft afternoon sunlight filtering through the window, creating a warm yet introspective atmosphere. He looked out at the New York City skyline, its skyscrapers standing as silent witnesses to his struggles, and memories of his journey flooded his mind with painful clarity. The young man who had dreamed of being a leader in a major technology company was now the CEO of Tech Dynamics, but the challenges felt even more immense than he had anticipated. He recalled significant moments from his childhood. "How many times did I hear you're not good enough? How many times was I told that my place wasn't here?" he thought, as the image of his mother came to mind. A strong woman, she had always taught him the importance of perseverance. She had faced her battles with dignity and resilience, and in many ways, Michael wanted to honor that legacy. He sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The path he had chosen was not easy, but it was necessary. In that moment of reflection, his phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from his former mentor, Dr. Samuel Reed, a university professor who had been a crucial influence in his life. "Michael, I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" the message read. Without hesitation, he replied affirmatively, and soon found himself eagerly awaiting the meeting. It was always a relief to talk to someone who understood the difficulties he faced. When they met at a nearby cafe, Dr. Reed greeted him with a warm hug. "My young man, how are you handling all this? I heard about your new position. I'm so proud of you," the mentor said, his deep gaze reflecting admiration and concern. "Thank you, Dr. Reed. I'm trying, but it's more complicated than I expected. Sarah and David, the directors, are not accepting me well. They don't believe in me, and that has been discouraging," Michael replied, his voice heavy with frustration. Dr. Reed smiled, but with a touch of seriousness. "You know that great changes never come without resistance, right? People often fear what they don't understand. You need to stay strong. They need to hear your story, Michael. You carry an experience that can inspire and transform the culture of Tech Dynamics. Do you really think that can make a difference?" Michael asked, insecurity creeping into his voice. "Absolutely. Your story is powerful. Sharing it with your team can create empathy and connection. People need to see the man behind the title, to understand the struggles you've overcome. This could be the turning point you need," Dr. Reed encouraged, his voice firm and convincing. Michael felt a wave of determination swell within him. "You're right. I need to do this. I can't let prejudice and ignorance stop me from being who I am," he asserted, his voice now more confident. The two men talked for some time, and with each word from Dr. Reed, Michael felt more empowered. As they parted ways, he thanked his mentor once again. "You always know how to motivate me. I will share my story with the team. This could be what we need to start the change." As he walked back to Tech Dynamics, Michael reflected on his mentor's words. He knew the journey would be long and filled with challenges, but now he had a new purpose. He was determined to use his life story as a tool for transformation. It was time to show everyone that inclusion was not just a policy to follow, but a vital necessity for the success of everyone in the company. He was ready to face whatever came his way, guided by the strength of his experiences. Michael was nervous, but his determination outweighed any insecurity. He had called for a general meeting, a moment he knew was crucial for transforming the culture at Tech Dynamics. Sitting at the main table in the conference room, he observed the faces of his team. Many were familiar, but some appeared distant, skeptical, and even hostile. Sarah and David were there wearing disdainful expressions, but he decided not to be shaken. The clock struck 9 a.m. When Michael stood up, the room now filled with murmurs of expectation. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, and began his presentation. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Today is a special day, not just for me, but for all of us at Tech Dynamics," he said, his voice firm yet laden with emotion. He projected images onto a screen, photos of his childhood, his family, and significant moments from his journey. "This is my story. I grew up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, and the daily struggle against prejudice was a constant. I remember one particular day when I was called incompetent just because of the color of my skin. That became fuel for me, he shared, as the gaze of the employees began to shift. In that room, silence deepened, and some employees exchanged surprised glances. Michael continued, "I'm not here just to be the CEO. I'm here to ensure that each of you has a place and a voice in this company. We cannot thrive if we are not together. We need inclusion, we need diversity, and it starts with each of us." A staff member timidly raised her hand and asked, "Michael, how can we help? What can we do to change this together?" Michael's heart warmed at the question. That's the right attitude. We need all of you on board. I suggest we start with workshops on unconscious bias and inclusion. Let's create an environment where everyone feels safe to express themselves. Sarah, who had remained silent until then, decided to interject. "And who will lead these workshops? You? It could be a waste of time." She smiled sarcastically, but Michael was prepared for the provocation. "No, Sarah. I won't be the one to do it. It will be all of us. Leadership is a collective responsibility, and each of you has something to contribute," he replied, looking directly into her eyes, challenging her to continue. The atmosphere in the room began to change. Murmurs of support started to spread, and many employees nodded in agreement with what he was saying. Michael felt he was making progress. "It's not just about listening to me. It's about us listening to each other. We need to understand each other's experiences and how they shape our work environment," he emphasized, his tone now softer and more engaging. "I want you to feel comfortable sharing your stories, just as I shared mine. Let's create space for dialogue. We need to listen and learn from each other so we can build a better future for Tech Dynamics," he continued, his gaze firm and hopeful. As his presentation progressed, he noticed tears in the eyes of some people, which encouraged him to keep going. "Together we can create a legacy of inclusion that will not only improve our company, but also impact our industry and beyond. Let's be the change we want to see," he concluded, his heart pounding with emotion. When Michael finished, silence fell again, but this time, it was a silence of reflection and connection. The skeptical expressions had given way to looks of consideration. He had managed to touch their souls, and this was just the beginning. Sarah and David watched from the conference room, their faces marked by expressions of distrust and unease. The recent general meeting, where Michael had shared a story that touched many hearts, echoed in their minds like an impending threat. Michael's popularity was rapidly growing among the staff, and that left them on high alert. Sarah, with her arms crossed and a challenging look, spoke first, trying to mask her nerves. "Did you see how they reacted? Those emotional speeches have no place here. This is a company, not a therapy session," she said, breaking the silence with her cutting voice. David nodded, a gleam of determination in his eyes. "We need to do something, and fast. We can't let him establish himself. If we do, he will swallow us whole. We need to discredit him at the next board meeting." Sarah smiled, a mischievous idea starting to form in her mind. "Exactly. Let's use that financial report that's about to be released. We can manipulate the data to make it look like he doesn't know what he's doing. If we can create a narrative that Michael is leading the company to failure, we can regain control." David crossed his arms, deep in thought. "What if we do it before the next quarterly presentation? Turning the board against him might be exactly what we need." As they plotted, the tension in the room increased. The leadership team was beginning to realize the growing divide between them and the loyalty of the employees to Michael. They knew the next board meeting would be crucial, and they were determined to turn the tide. On the morning of the meeting, the atmosphere was charged. Michael entered the room with his usual confidence but noticed the coldness in Sarah and David's glares. The mood was heavy, and he sensed that something was off. He sat down at the table, prepared to present the results, but couldn't shake the feeling that his adversaries were scheming. "Good morning, everyone," Michael began, his voice steady. "I'm looking forward to discussing this quarter's results and the positive impact our new focus on inclusion and diversity is having on Tech Dynamics." Sarah wasted no time. "Michael, before you start, I'd like to discuss some concerns that David and I have regarding your management. It seems that your decisions are affecting our financial performance. Are you sure you're on the right path?" The room fell silent. Michael's gaze locked onto Sarah, his expression calm, but the determination in his eyes was unmistakable. "I firmly believe that inclusion and diversity are fundamental to Tech Dynamics growth. The changes I proposed are not just about numbers. They are about building an environment where everyone feels valued." David interjected sarcastically, Valued? Or do you mean that you're wasting precious resources on initiatives that we don't even know will work? We need results, and fast, before it's too late. Michael took a deep breath, realizing they were just trying to provoke him. I understand your concerns, but results aren't just financial. They also measure the health of our organizational culture, and that will take time. Sarah leaned forward, her voice laced with disdain. But what if the time you're asking for costs us the company? We need a leader who understands that results are a priority. And frankly, I'm not sure you are that leader. Her words echoed in the room, and a murmur of discontent began to rise among the other directors. The tension was at a critical point, and Michael felt he needed to act quickly. If there are concerns about my leadership, I ask that we discuss them openly. That's what a true team does. I'm willing to listen. Karen, who had been silent until then, decided to intervene. I think we all agree that the company culture needs to change, and that won't happen if we don't give Michael a chance. He's showing us a different path, and we need to be open to it. Sarah's gaze narrowed, and David furrowed his brow in displeasure. The division was becoming evident, and the team was beginning to realize that loyalty was forming around Michael. The battle for control was just beginning, and the tension in future meetings promised to be even more intense. Michael looked at the Tech Dynamics event hall, now decorated with flags from different countries, tables with brochures on diversity and inclusion, and a large banner that read, "Together in Diversity." He felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This was his first major event since taking on the CEO role, and the anticipation was palpable. Employees from all areas had been invited, and their presence was crucial for the initiative's success. As the guests began to arrive, Michael walked among the tables, greeting employees and thanking them for attending. He smiled when he saw both familiar and unfamiliar faces, all ready to listen and engage. "Hi, Anna. So good to see you here. Thanks for coming," he said to a young programmer who looked nervous yet excited. "Thank you, Michael. I'm looking forward to seeing what you've prepared," Anna replied, her shy smile reflecting the hope many felt at that moment. As the room filled, the positive energy became evident. Employees chatted animatedly about their experiences, and among them, a diverse group of colleagues was forming. It was a sign that inclusion was beginning to manifest organically within the company. Michael took the stage, thanking everyone for their presence. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to see each of you here today. This event is more than just a meeting. It's an opportunity for us as an organization to reflect on who we are and who we want to be. Diversity is not just a requirement. It's a vital force for innovation and success at Tech Dynamics," he began, his voice strong and full of emotion. The audience listened in silence, and Michael continued, "I believe everyone has a story, stories that need to be heard. Today, I encourage each of you to share your experiences, to open up and connect with your colleagues. Together, we can create an environment where everyone feels valued and respected." After Michael's introduction, Karen took She was the HR manager and had been one of the main organizers of the event. "Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Today we'll have moments of learning, but more importantly, we'll have moments of sharing." We invited several employees to join us and share their stories and struggles. "We believe that by listening, we can better understand and become allies to each other," she said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. The first speakers were selected to share their stories. A software engineer named David, who was one of the first to present, spoke sincerely. "I grew up in a neighborhood where technology seemed like a distant dream. When I arrived at Tech Dynamics, I felt like I didn't belong. But over time, I realized that diversity is one of the reasons we have such an innovative environment. And I want everyone to know that you belong here. We belong here together." With each story shared, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Employees began to feel emotional. Some were laughing while others wiped away tears. Michael watched with pride as the resistance he faced began to dissipate, giving way to a growing unity. When the event reached its climax, a group of employees stood up, sharing their own stories and challenges. One of them, an administrative assistant named Julia, said, "I used to be afraid to talk about my experiences as a woman in technology, but now I see it's essential to share. I'm not just a function. I'm a person with a story, and that's what we should celebrate." The applause was thunderous, and Michael realized that each person's words were planting seeds of change. He approached the microphone again, his voice heavy with emotion. "Thank you all for being so courageous. What you did here today is not just a step toward inclusion, but a giant leap toward a future where everyone feels seen and heard. Let's continue this conversation and work together to make Tech Dynamics an example of diversity and inclusion. At the end of the event, many employees approached Michael and Karen, expressing their gratitude. The joy and sense of belonging were palpable. Michael knew there was still much work ahead, but that day he felt he had taken a significant step toward the future he so desired for Tech Dynamics. The unity and strength that emerged from that event were proof that change was not only possible, but inevitable. Sarah and David were increasingly irritated by Michael's rise at Tech Dynamics. After the diversity event, where the team united around a common cause, Michael's popularity soared, and that was intolerable for them. As they met at a nearby cafe, the tension between them was palpable. We cannot allow this to continue. He is becoming a central figure, and that cannot happen. We need to do something, Sarah said nervously, stirring her coffee. David, with a thoughtful expression, observed the movements of employees passing by the cafe window. Yes, but what can we do? He has the support of most people now. We need a plan to discredit him, and fast. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes shining with an idea. What if we manipulated the company's financial numbers? If we can create a narrative that shows his decisions are leading Tech Dynamics to bankruptcy, that could be our chance. David frowned. But what if someone finds out? We can't risk something that big. It could put us in a complicated situation. If we do it smartly, no one will find out. We have access to the financial reports. We can alter some key data to make it look much worse than it really is. If the board believes the company is in trouble, they'll turn against him, Sarah argued, her confidence growing. David hesitated, but the thought of Michael in a position of power troubled him deeply. All right, let's do it. But we need to be careful. We need a detailed plan and time to execute. Meanwhile, in the office, one of Michael's most loyal employees, Lucas, had been hearing rumors about Sarah and David's maneuvers. He had noticed how the duo was trying to undermine Michael and decided to stay alert. As the days went by, Lucas began to piece things together. In an informal conversation with a colleague, he heard about strange changes in the financial reports. Did you notice that the numbers don't add up? It seems like they're trying to hide something, Lucas said, looking at his colleague's worried face. Yeah, I noticed. I was thinking about how this doesn't make sense. How could the company have such a good profit last quarter, and now the forecasts are so bad? The colleague replied, shaking his head. Lucas decided to investigate further. He accessed the financial reports and, after several hours of work, found the alterations. This is unbelievable, he muttered to himself, analyzing the manipulated data. They're really trying to bring down Michael. With his heart racing, Lucas knew he needed to act. He remembered a conversation he had with Michael about the importance of transparency and ethics in business. I can't let this happen, he thought, determined to protect Michael and the company. The next morning, Lucas headed to Michael's office, filled with a mix of nervousness and determination. Upon entering, he found Michael reviewing some documents. Hey Lucas, how's it going? What brings you here so early? Michael asked, looking up. Michael, I need to talk to you about something serious. It's about Sarah and David. They're planning something against you and the company, Lucas said, trying to stay calm. What do you mean? Michael inquired, his expression becoming serious. Lucas took a deep breath. I discovered they're manipulating the financial numbers. They want to create a narrative that you're leading Tech Dynamics to bankruptcy. I saw the documents, and it's all a big conspiracy. Michael's expression changed, but he remained calm. This is very serious, Lucas. Can you show me what you found? Of course. I saved the original reports and the altered versions. We need to act fast before they put their plan into action, Lucas replied, determined. Michael nodded, his mind already racing. Thank you for bringing this to me. Let's make sure the truth comes out. Michael sat in his office, his eyes fixed on the documents proving Sarah and David's conspiracy. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he prepared for the extraordinary board meeting. He knew this moment was crucial not only for his leadership, but for the very culture of Tech Dynamics. With one last look at the papers, he stood up and headed to the meeting room, where the directors were already waiting. Upon entering, the tension in the air was palpable. Sarah and David were sitting across from each other, their expressions a mix of disdain and surprise at seeing Michael so determined. The other directors, for the most part, looked nervous, unsure how to react. Michael took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and began, Thank you all for being here today. I invited you to discuss serious matters affecting not only our company, but also our integrity as leaders. I received troubling information involving the manipulation of financial data and deliberate attempts to destabilize Tech Dynamics, he announced in a firm voice. Murmurs began to rise among the directors. But Misha, before anyone thinks of diverting attention, I have concrete evidence. He placed the documents on the table and gestured for everyone to take a look. This is ridiculous, Sarah exclaimed, trying to dismiss the evidence. You can't just accuse people without proper grounds. Michael locked eyes with her, his gaze piercing. Sarah, the documents speak for themselves. This isn't just my word against yours. We have testimonies from employees who witnessed you manipulating data to create a false narrative about the company's financial health. This is a matter of ethics. David, trying to change strategy, interjected, You're exaggerating, Michael. We all know numbers can be interpreted in various ways. What you're doing is a personal attack. It's not personal, David, Michael replied, with a calmness that challenged the agitation of the other directors. It's about the responsibility we have as Lee. If we want Tech Dynamics to be an example of inclusion and diversity, we need to act with integrity. What you're doing is the opposite. Michael's words began to resonate in the room, and a few directors exchanged worried glances. Karen, who had remained silent until then, raised her hand. I'd like to speak, she said, her voice a bit shaky but firm. I saw what happened. I tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. What Sarah and David are doing is unacceptable. We need a work environment where everyone feels safe and respected. Michael smiled at Karen, feeling supported. Thank you, Karen. This shows we're not alone in this fight. We need to protect Tech Dynamics from any attempts at sabotage. The room fell silent as Sarah and David exchanged nervous glances. Michael continued, Based on the evidence I've gathered, the decision is clear. We cannot allow a culture of bias and sabotage to prevail. Therefore, in the name of ethics and integrity, I am revoking the positions of both of you as directors. From this moment on, you are all fired. Shock swept through the room. Some directors looked relieved, while others appeared visibly unsettled. Sarah, now pale, stood up indignant. You can't do this. This is retaliation. This is not retaliation. It's a necessity, Michael responded without hesitation. Tech Dynamics deserves leaders who inspire trust and respect, not dishonesty and pee. I thank you all for your honesty and support. Together, we will build a new era of inclusion and diversity in this company. The meeting ended with hesitant applause, but it soon turned into a celebration of the new path Michael was charting for Tech Dynamics. He had weathered the storm and emerged victorious with courage. The team now had a leader who not only believed in change, but was also prepared to fight for it. We've reached the end of this moving story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more accounts like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Right now, there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to keep watching these touching stories, just click on it to start. And now, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and leave a like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to know your opinion. Until the next video.